See, as 5 officers from the Tyre Nichols confrontation are in jail. Of course, we're following this very closely here on Live Now from Fox. I want to bring in our Fox associate, Charles Watson, who's on the ground in Memphis, Tennessee. Charles, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. What can you tell us about the latest, and what do we expect out of this 2 p.m. Central press conference?
Well, Andy, I can tell you the 5 former Memphis police officers who were involved in the beating of 29-year-old Tyre Nichols that led to his death are now in police custody. We learned just a couple of hours ago that they all were booked inside of the Shelby County jail just up the road from where we are, and they're facing a long list of charges, all of them, and including second-degree murder, official misconduct, and aggravated kidnapping. That, again, with other charges. We learned that they were booked inside of the Shelby County Jail just a short while ago, and this after we had heard this morning that a grand jury convened inside of the Shelby County Courthouse here behind me to try to decide whether these officers would face charges or not. Now, we do know that they are facing charges in the beating and the death of Tyre Nichols. Now we're expecting that press conference from Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy, and about 30 minutes from now, 2 o'clock Central Time, where we are expecting the DA to officially announce the charges against these officers. Now, as far as the body cam video that captured this beating of Nichols, it is unclear right now when it will be released, but the DA did say earlier this week that the release of the video could coincide with charges. So we have charges now, so we're just waiting for the video. We had heard that it could be released as early as tomorrow, and we get the sense that officials here in Memphis, as well as the Memphis Police Department, are preparing for that. Overnight, we heard from the Memphis police chief, who called the acts of those officers heinous, and she really urged the public to practice peaceful protests, as in her words, as the video is expected to be released in the coming days. So it could be as early as today, it could be tomorrow. That is unclear. We're going to press the DA on when exactly we can expect the release of that body cam video. But, you know, earlier this week, we heard from the family of Tyre Nichols and civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who described the video as heinous and savage, a beating of a defenseless person by those officers. They said at the very least those officers kicked, pepper sprayed and tased Mr. Nichols, and they also released some preliminary results from an independent autopsy that they had done, saying that Mr. Nichols, at the very least, suffered severe bleeding that contributed to his death. So, again, we're waiting the press conference. We're waiting the press conference from DA Steve Mulroy in just a few minutes from now. And we're also waiting for a press conference in about an hour and a half from now from one of the attorneys who are representing one of the former officers who is now in jail. Andy?
Thank you so much. That is a lot of detail there, and we appreciate it, Charles Watson. I do have a question, because like you said, the video is going to be so important for this, and they also, the police chief also called it reckless, the death of Tyre Nichols. What is the sense in Memphis? Because she wanted to make sure that people don't react violently, that something doesn't break out following this. Kind of what's the reaction been like over the last few weeks with Tyre Nichols' death coming just a few days after his arrest? What is the reaction from just the public about all of this that's going on?
Well, you know, there's been a lot of anger from the public, certainly since the family of Mr. Nichols released that photo showing him in the hospital intubated with blood leaking onto his bed, and, you know, just bruises all over his face. You know, seeing that angered a lot of folks in the community. But as we heard from the family earlier this week, they asked the community, look, if you're going to protest, they ask that it be peaceful. So far we haven't seen any troubles in terms of protests. We know there is a visual expected in the city later this evening, so we'll check that out and see how that goes. But of course, again, we haven't seen this video just yet, and from what we've heard from the family and the police chief, it is pretty hard to look at. So of course, when people get a chance to look at that video, it could excite a lot of emotions from people, and you know, things could turn bad. I mean, we're hoping that they don't, and officials here in Memphis are hoping that they don't. But you know, that is the reality of what we're dealing with right now, Andy.
All right. Thank you so much for your reporting. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on the press conferences, like you said, in Shelby County, and also potentially an attorney for one of the former Memphis police officers. We appreciate your reporting here on Live Now from Fox. Thanks again. Thank you again to Charles Watson. Some great reporting there as we continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Certainly some new details that we're slowly learning out of Memphis, Tennessee. Of course, these are the 5 now former police officers out of Memphis, Tennessee, as the body cam footage expected to be released possibly today, possibly and more likely tomorrow. Authorities in Tennessee preparing for that release of Tyre Nichols, a 29-year-old black man who died 3 days after a traffic stop on January the 7th. Of course, the police chief there called the death heinous, reckless, and inhumane. Of course, we also heard earlier this week from civil rights attorney Ben Crump talking about it with the family as well. Of course, this dates back to January the 7th when Nichols was pulled over around 8:30 p.m. for, quote, reckless driving. A, quote, confrontation occurred during the stop, which resulted in a police chase. Nichols on foot, police said. He was later apprehended. Quote, while attempting to take the suspect into custody, another confrontation occurred. However, the suspect was ultimately apprehended. Afterward, the suspect complained of having shortness of breath, at which point an ambulance called to the scene. He was transported in critical condition to a St. Francis hospital where he died 3 days later. We're expecting several press conferences today in regards to this latest developments and the new charges being filed with murder against these 5 former Memphis police officers. So certainly we're going to follow this here on Live Now from Fox.